Go to Wow Furniture, as we did. We went and I'm going to go off into the weeds for just 30 seconds here. You had picked out 3 different types of chairs.
I wanted to give you some choices.
And you showed me this. And there's a book that came out years ago called Blink that you make up your mind.
Malcolm Gladwell.
When you go into a house, you know within 5 seconds whether you like that house
Yes.
or not. And the only time when you're buying a house and you go, oh gosh, I got to go through all the rooms now, but I want to get out of here, because usually the owners are sitting there and you don't want to say, I hate your house, I'm out of here. Well, I sat down, these are the first chairs that you showed me to. I sat down and I said, you don't have to show me anymore. These are the chairs. That's what you'll find, I think. You'll have a blink moment where you'll go, that's the chair I want. Go down, 15% off their leather groupings this week at Wow. And it's just across the street from Gobsmith.
I-25 and County Line.
I'm
Give
trying to
them
get
the streets.
Gobsmith as a sponsor so I
I-25
get a
and
new
County
set of
Line.
clubs. Because I told a guy the other day, he said, how was your game? And I said, when I was in Florida, and I said, operator error. So it doesn't matter whether you give me a new set of clubs.
Right. So you did the
here's what-
ad. Now you got to do the commentary. But
Sure.
I want to tell everybody that right after the commentary, Brandon Stokely is already here. He's going to be joining us momentarily.
Sure.
Brandon
I'm going to
Stokely.
follow up what we were talking about in the last segment, quarterbacks. And what I mentioned that Andrew Luck, after all the RG3s have come through and Geno Smith, we're back to the prototype quarterback. So they keep saying, they, meaning people who observe the NFL, that the game is changing. The quarterback position is changing. Sure, they're trying to change it, but guess what? They can't change it because the best quarterback in the league. And Russell Wilson, even though he runs the football, he is a pocket passer. That makes him different from these other guys, and he won a Super Bowl last year. Who is the best quarterback? The debate rages on. And we brought up 2 of the greatest of all time, Marino and Elway. And the Broncos, of course, have a guy who's always in the first paragraph, Peyton Manning. Well, who else is on that list? I mentioned Dan Fouts. When I was on the Hall of Fame football selection committee, we put Dan Fouts in the Hall of Fame. He was the only quarterback, Les, who's in the Hall of Fame who never won a championship. So that shows you that he rose above the crowd and was impressive enough to a group of observers, 35, who'd followed the game for a combined 500 years, that people did believe, as you said, Dan Fouts was among the best. Johnny Unitas belongs in that conversation. People will say Terry Bradshaw won 4 championships, but nobody ever talks about him as the greatest quarterback of all time. I think when it comes down to it, what is important? We talked about the MVP here yesterday. Who should be the MVP? And Les pointed out that there was a baseball MVP played for a last place team. I believe that as a Hall of Famer, not only, because baseball has just chosen its Hall of Famers, not only is it that you're good, you have the statistics, you have the length of being around the game for a long time, but it's also winning. John Elway, when he retired from the game, was the greatest regular season quarterback of his era or any other era. He won more regular season games than anybody. But until he won those 2 Super Bowls, nobody was talking about him as the greatest. But he's in the top 5 or 6. I think when you measure a man, measure a quarterback, you have to say, what did they win? Nobody here will say that Joe Montana was the best athlete who ever played the game, or even the best quarterback. But isn't he the number 1 quarterback of all time?
According to a lot of people.
For one reason. He won 4 championships in a short period of time with the San Francisco 49ers, who were the most dominant dynasty until the Broncos came along in the next grouping.
And he performed brilliantly in those 4 games.
So I'm sitting and telling you that I wrote before the last Super Bowl that I thought if Peyton Manning won that Super Bowl, he would be the best of all time when you consider the records and the length of his career and all the accomplishments and all the records. He didn't win it. I think he still has a chance to be the greatest of all time. He's got 2 years to do it. He's running out of time. He's got to do it this year. If he did it this year and next year, 3, and 5 total Super Bowls, I would put him past Montana. But right now, as a guy who didn't spend any time with Montana, other than at Super Bowls, Joe Montana is still the best quarterback in the history of the game because he won those 4 championships, and you edge him over Terry Bradshaw, who played with the greatest team, I think,
Yes.
in history. But don't you find it funny, to finish this thought, that there are commercials running for Papa John's right now that feature Peyton Manning and Joe Montana? They are 2 of what I would consider the top 5. And the Broncos have been fortunate enough to have 2 of them. Guess what? The San Francisco 49ers have had 2 of them, too.
Montana and Steve Young.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's what it's
I have-
brought to you by Wow Furniture.